Alright guys, so I put a poll up on a Facebook group, what was it, Procreate Beginners group on Facebook, and those guys have been really good with helping me do YouTube channel and so on, and there's lots of tips and tricks on there, so I'll put the link in the description for you guys to follow it if you so wish. But the one thing I did do was put a poll up, and so far there was 3 categories. One was learning how to color shade your character. The other one was to Procreate brushes, and then I did one that was to do with canvas sizes. Because once you transfer a canvas or work on a canvas and you zoom in and out of it, when you take it back to kind of aspect ratio to move it into like Instagram, it loses its quality. So I'll probably do like a tutorial on pretty much 1 or 2 of these things anyway. But to start off with, the poll that was winning so far was how to color your character. So this one, we're going to do this guy right here. If some of you might know, it's a caricature of Samuel L. Jackson from Pulp Fiction. I think I put it up a while back, but this one still had my line art on it, so that we can just jump straight into the tutorial. So you can see by these layers there's loads and loads of them, but obviously I'm going to start completely from a line art perspective. So when you do this, you want to obviously do your sketch layer, then you're going to do an inks layer, and then you're going to do something called flats or colors. Yeah, so here my inks layer, you're going to add a layer, put this below, and then you're going to tap your inks layer and change it to reference. So it should say reference, should be a tick. Now anything I color drop, this is like the easiest way to do this kind of stuff. So anything that you color drop will reference this layer. So if we just find on my desk, actually might be a lot easier. Oh. Try and find kind of darkish. Yeah, that'll do. So you can color drop into this layer. Okay, now what you want to try and do in my eyes is to make sure that you get as high a threshold as possible. So that seems probably about right. The higher the threshold, the better the line quality inside's going to be to here. Okay, now let's say if I did this color drop again, and it drops in and I drop the threshold, when I zoom in, you lose certain parts that don't cover, and it usually puts a ring around it, which is not very good. So I'm going to carry on color dropping these guys in. I just color drop the line art. So the best thing to do is zoom in when you're doing smaller parts. So that's his face. Then we'll go into his lips. Go crazy, I suppose. Not too crazy, but crazy enough. Now when you do color drops, you can, in essence, I've seen people do an extra layer and then they have a color palette ready for them, so they do an extra layer on top and then they would go, right, I want this color from this area here, and they would draw something here, so they can just grab that color and then move it over, so they don't have to keep coming back to certain layers. But once you start color dropping, it's kind of the general idea that you get. So next thing to do is the eyes. So there's a lightest grey, I suppose. Nope, don't want that. Go in a bit further. It's a good threshold, that one. Alright, so now you can see, like, on top of this, like, this is all white because I've turned the threshold up. So it'd be a bit of a pain to do all this. If I tried color dropping, it would just go mental. So just remember when you do inks that you need to make sure that you're kind of making sure that your inks are solid, ready for the flats kind of thing. That would be my best case. Sorry, best suggestion when it comes to that. Alright, soft brush, turn the opacity, brush size. Alright, that's better. Alright, so that's good, but just remember that if I was to, you know, say, oh look, color's done, that's it, flats are done, I'm going to export this. A good way of making sure that you've done all the coloring in your flats is to actually change the background color. So I just go for a lighter gray, or blue, sorry. Now you can see that I need to still actually do some more colors. So going back to my layer, finding myself a white, I guess. And then just go in here, color drop these. So obviously I need to turn the threshold down. Not too much, but enough. Solid that. Teeth. And then the shirt. So basically, I've just color dropped all the flats in, or like the main colors for this particular character, okay? And you can leave the background color on, or you can change it back to white. It's whatever you want to do, or you can turn it off completely, and then you'll just have the grid. You can see what you've got left. But we'll leave the background colors on. So that right now is your character, yeah, colored in. So the next thing to do is to do shadows, yeah. So making sure it's on the layer below. Add another layer. You can actually turn this off from reference if you want, but as long as the inks are on top, then you've got no problem with going past the ink layer. But you will go onto the actual canvas, yeah, because you can still draw on the canvas as it were. So you can draw on this, you can draw. One way to get past that is to do the alpha lock, and it's kind of a yeah, I mean, a real quick way of doing it. Like, seriously, I wouldn't, if you're doing this for kind of people, like proper work, then don't do this. But what you could do is change this to alpha lock. So alpha lock's on right now, yeah, on the color layer. So now, if I chose this, got a darker tone, or just slightly darker, and went in, I can't color past the canvas. So now this would be like a quick and easy way of coloring on top of the colors, really easy without going over top, if you understand the meaning. Okay, so I could easily color away, Don't have to worry about going over the top. The only thing you'd have to worry about is obviously where there's color. That's where I need to worry about it. But you could alpha lock that in. I wouldn't suggest that. If you were just doing it quickly, then go for it. Alpha lock, as you well know, is either 2 fingers right swipe or press the alpha lock, and then you get the little tick. Now it would alpha lock the color layer, so you could easily go over the top of the colors. But if you want to make changes to it later, you're going to have to redo all of it, or and you can't change your opacity, can't do anything like that, can't put it into a multiply, color burn, add, dodge, any of the settings. You can't do anything with it because it's all on one layer. So this is why you need to go onto another layer, get your opacity. I usually bring it down to 50, see what it looks like. Leave it on normal for now. You can put it on multiply if you so wish, but there's all these settings. Most people usually go for, when you're doing shadows, you go for multiply. So just remember, it will multiply whatever the color is here. So you can start working in the shadows. Most people use soft brush, but just remember that, see, I can go past the line now. So you need to keep that in mind when you're doing this kind of thing. So you just got to work in your brush, that kind of thing. Or the other way of doing it is, if you want kind of cell shading, cell shading I suppose, is to grab yourself a inking color, something that's like a solid edge. So like script from Calligraphy, this is one that I just have. Change the brush. You can make a loop and then just color drop inside it, okay? And that'll work just the same way as you doing the shading on top. So this is kind of like one way of doing it, like the cell shading. You can stay in the lines, make sure that you put it like so, drop it in, and then you can carry on doing the shading. Say the light source is coming this way, so you could always try and do the eyes, nose, come up, just add that, drop it in, and then you've got your shade there. Maybe some more around the mouth. Not going too fancy with it, but just so you can add these kind of qualities to it and you can see what's happening. So after shading, so all I've done is added a layer on top of the colors or flats layer, and then at that stage, now you can change these to different, and you can play around. See, that's normal lighting, doesn't, well, obviously it lines it, that's no good. Color dodge, so it actually changes, it flicks the light source over, so that actually looks pretty good, the way it is right now. Add, again, that looks pretty good. Line color does nothing. So an overlay, soft light, hard light, vivid light, linear light, pin light, hard max. So you can choose any of these. Subtract, not much hue, saturation, color, luminosity. So you can choose any of these really, but usually I do multiply for dark shadowing. But as you can see, like some of these were pretty, color dodge was pretty cool. But you just want to play around with it until you get into a system of what you want to use, basically. So that's shadows, and I would always try and name these like flats, shadows. Next one's going to be highlights. Yeah, so I would choose shadows, well not sorry, highlights. Probably go screen, choose light color, and then I mean, I've got a real hard brush right now, to be honest with you. Should kind of use a softer brush, I guess. Not one that's inking. Artistic airbrushes. What do I want? Most people do use this soft brush when they do stuff like this, I must admit. Obviously not that bad. A lot of people like this, the airbrush style. Kind of brings it in. But you just got to remember, like I said, so you're going to go over here. See, when you're doing that kind of stuff, if you do it light enough or it's small enough, you can get away with it. But you need to make sure that kind of staying within that layer. So the other option to do is to leave this on reference. So let's just go back, put this on reference. Actually, you tell like what I'm talking about. I was talking about alpha lock, wasn't I? It was reference you only need when you're just doing the color drop in. So this would be highlights. Pick yourself a brush, whatever you want to do. I'm gonna actually try and choose a brush now and actually do it properly. I'm pretty sure that's like a decent. A lot of people use the gouache. Is it gouache? I think it's gouache brush. But I'm not going to go try and find it now. So I usually do a lot of kind of cell stuff because I do lettering, like graffiti lettering. So, but I mean, most people when I see it, they use a kind of medium soft brush, or they like the water brush. That's always good. But something that gives you kind of the tone. Just like a highlight. And then next thing to do, so let's say I put this in, like so. Go into the layer, and then change it to like lighten, screen, color dodge, add it. Lighting color, overlay, yeah, soft light, yeah, hard light. So again, you're just gonna play with these, get it where you want it to be. Change the opacity again. Like these are all good things to use, is to use the opacity and then put in where you want the highlights and then kind of play around with this. I mean, screen is usually the one that people always use, and then they would go on top of this particular one and then do a rim light. So they go solid white, get the brush, whatever it might be, and then just kind of go over again. So trying to give it another layer. So there's more lighting, but obviously you wouldn't see that much lighting, so we could do it more here. Go back into your layer, change, see what it looks like, change the opacity again, dark color, line, color baron. And the more you play with it, the more you'll get into it. But I think people have more trouble trying to drop colors in from what I see just being on this group. So after I played with this a lot, you know, I did what I was doing. Let me just show you what I ended up with when I actually finished these layers. So I'm just going to move this all the way to here. And then I'll turn on all the layers except for these two. This one, this one, this one, and this one. And that's what I kind of ended up with, yeah? So you just need to carry on doing, you know, going over stuff and seeing what it does, what helps, what doesn't. Because most of all these layers, I just turn the opacity down. Shade layer, they're still on normal, but I'd get a different effect. All I did was change the actual opacity. I didn't change anything else. Color drop still in, that's on normal, that's on full. So one thing to do is just to play around. Other good things is to take reference photos and like look at like a movie, take an image from it, see what that looks like. Let me see. I'll explain it better. Just any movie. Here we go, Batman. Images. So let's get just one with good shadow aspect, I suppose. So that'll do. So here you can see the highlights, shadowed areas. So you can use this as a reference. So let's say you did draw this, sketched it out, drew it. Then you use this as a reference and say, right, I'm going to pick the darks first. So I'll do flat colors, then I'm going to add a layer, then I'm going to put my shadows in. So my shadows are going to be here. Obviously this is going to be darker, and then I'm going to put my highlights in. So on top, oh, that's probably a better photo right there. So you can see here, this is all soft, but darker areas, highlights, and this is all probably done like Bruce Timm, the way he draws is his character drawing is probably one of the best, and they reinvented like the Batman series. But you know, there's soft highlights. You can use the blur tool. So these grays are probably one gray with dark gray, and then there's a blur tool that's just gone over the top of it to make it a lot better. So that's kind of one way of doing it. Let's see if there's another. This one, you can do your flats, light gray for shadows, highlights, then rim light on either side. And these are just extra layers being put on top. And one way is to make sure that as long as the ink layer is on top of those layers, you won't go over the ink line, yeah? And you can leave it as a reference, but the reference was there so you could drop your colors in, and then you would just layer on top of that, and that'll make easier. But like I said, you can alpha lock a color layer and draw on top of that if you so wish, but if you're working, if you need to go back and change something, then one way or another you're screwed. But hopefully this was helpful, and really the main idea here was, you know, you get your reference layer, or show your actual ink layer, and then after the ink layer you want to change this to reference your ink layer, put a layer underneath it, and then drop your colors, and then anything after that you want to put on top, and then you can change to whatever you want it to be. I'll probably do more of an in-depth tutorial on, you know, doing a whole character, but for now hopefully this was a little bit helpful and what you need to do. If you've got any questions, then obviously feel free to ask, and see you till next time.